The monitor's beeping had become a countdown, sharp, relentless. Each second felt like a hammer against the cold hospital walls. A young woman lay motionless on the stretcher. Her lips were pale. Her heartbeat was fading. Doctors shouted commands. Nurses rushed with carts. But in the middle of that storm, a single sound cut through the chaos. A dog's desperate howl. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Valley for more powerful stories. Her name was Emma, 24 years old, vibrant and full of life just hours before. A sudden allergic reaction during a morning jog had thrown her into a spiral. By the time help arrived, her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak. She was rushed through the emergency doors of St. Mary's Hospital. Her loyal golden retriever, Max, never left her side. The security guard had tried to hold him back, but the dog broke free, sliding through the glass doors like he'd done it 100 times before. The ER was washed in harsh fluorescent light. White coats moved like ghosts. The smell of antiseptic hung heavy. Emma's mother cried silently in the corner, clutching her scarf. Max sat near the foot of the stretcher, chest heaving, eyes fixed on Emma as if willing her to breathe. Time stretched thin. Emma's heart rate dropped again. A doctor whispered, "She's not responding." Another nurse checked the clock. 3 minutes, maybe less. A young intern, still new to the adrenaline of emergencies, looked down at Max. "We need to get this dog out." But the lead doctor stopped him. "Leave him. She can still hear." Max inched closer, ignoring the wires and machines. His nose brushed against Emma's limp hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a single weak finger twitched. It wasn't enough. Her heartbeat was dipping lower, like a tide receding into the night. The doctors prepared the defibrillator. But as they lifted the paddles, Max suddenly jumped onto the stretcher. Gasps filled the room. A nurse screamed, "Get him down!" But before anyone could reach him, Max positioned himself over Emma's chest, pressing gently, rhythmically, with his front paws. Not random, it looked deliberate. Like he was mimicking CPR he had seen her practice during her medical volunteer days. The room froze. For 2 precious seconds, even the machines seemed to pause. Then beep, beep, beep. Her heart monitor flickered back into rhythm. Weak, but there. The doctors snapped back into action. "We've got something," one shouted. The defibrillator was lowered, adrenaline shot administered, but Max didn't leave. He stayed pressed close to Emma's chest, nose near her face as if whispering, "Stay with me." What the doctors didn't know was that Max had been trained by Emma herself for therapy visits. He'd learned to sense changes in breathing and heartbeat, to alert, to press, to stay. What he did now wasn't luck. It was love and memory colliding in a moment of desperate instinct. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, Emma's breathing grew steady. Her eyelids fluttered. The doctors leaned in. She whispered one word, "Max." A silence settled in the ER. It wasn't the cold silence of fear anymore. It was the warm, fragile silence after a miracle. Even the most hardened nurse wiped her eyes. Later that day, when the crisis had passed and Emma rested in ICU, the hospital staff gathered in the hallway, replaying the security footage. The lead doctor shook his head. "I've worked here 30 years. I've seen machines save lives, but I've never seen that." The intern who'd wanted to remove Max stared at the screen. The dog's movements were precise, almost as if he'd known what to do. The room filled with quiet awe. It wasn't just medical science at work that day. It was loyalty. Emma recovered fully within weeks. The story spread through the hospital like wildfire. Some called it instinct. Others called it divine timing. But Emma called it something simpler. He didn't give up when everyone else almost did. On her discharge day, the doctors stood by the door as Max walked proudly beside her, a small bandana around his neck reading "Hero." He wagged his tail, unaware of the lives he'd changed. That night, the hospital staff placed a framed photo of Max in the ER hallway, not as decoration, as a reminder, because sometimes in places where hope runs thin, courage doesn't come from who wears the white coat. It comes from those who love without words. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below and subscribe. Kindness Valley, for more untold stories.